My mother-in-law called me a broke nobody at family dinner, laughing, "You'll answer to my daughter soon." They didn't know I was actually her manager at work. I stayed silent, took notes, then I did this. 2 weeks later, their perfect lives fell apart. My mother-in-law called me a broke nobody in front of the whole family. She was absolutely sure her daughter was my boss. She had no idea it was the other way around, that I was the one deciding her princess's professional future. That dinner in Allison's honor, they'll remember it for a long time. Do you even understand how embarrassing this is? Ellen, my mother-in-law, looked at me like I was something she'd found under the fridge. My Allie makes 3 times more than you. 3 times? She pressed 3 fingers to the table like she was stabbing it. And you, who are you? A pathetic broke girl, a nothing. She clutched at her chest dramatically. My daughter is a project coordinator at a major company, running teams, working with clients. Her eyes flicked over my clothes. And you? Some tiny little assistant running around after everyone. You don't even make half her salary. Family dinner in our tiny downtown apartment on Maple Street had turned into a public trial. Ellen sat at the head of the table like a grand inquisitor. "So, how much do you actually make?" She drilled into me with that sharp stare. "And don't you dare hide behind confidentiality. At this table there are no secrets." "Mom," my husband tried to cut in. "Mark, shut up," she snapped. "I want to know what my son traded a normal life for, because your sister, for example, can afford anything she wants." "Isn't that right, honey?" She purred toward Allison. Allison smirked and adjusted her Cartier earrings so they flashed in the light. "For Austin, it's more than respectable." She said, "Exactly." Ellen jabbed a finger in my direction. "And this one, judging by those bargain bin clothes, doesn't even make half that. An office rat breaking her back for peanuts and actually proud of it." My brother-in-law Derek snorted. "Yeah, with that kind of salary you can only chase store promos." He chuckled. Mark said nothing. He just pushed his salad around his plate and kept his eyes down. Every word burned like acid. I sat there thinking about the nights I'd spent awake over project plans, the decisions that kept entire departments running, the numbers and responsibilities they couldn't even imagine. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I smiled, quietly, and mentally filed every word away. The drive home felt endless. Mark's beat-up Ford Focus rolled through late-night Austin like nothing had happened. He stared straight ahead, knuckles white on the wheel, pretending everything was fine. By the time we hit Congress Avenue, I snapped. "How long are you going to stay quiet?" I asked. You know how my mom is," he muttered. "I do know," I said, louder than I meant to. "I know your precious mom thinks I'm worthless. I know your sister looks at me like I'm hired help. I know Derek laughs right in my face. And you sit there and, what, pick at your salad?" "I'm just a coward," he whispered. "I lock up when she yells, 'I'm sorry.'" His voice broke. "You know how hard you've worked for our mortgage." He pulled over near Zilker Park and parked under a streetlight. There were tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he repeated. "When she starts, I'm that scared little kid again. I'll talk to her. I promise." It was a lie, we both knew it. The next few days were his version of damage control. Flowers from the downtown farmer's market, a fancy box of chocolates from Target, as if a pile of chrysanthemums and sugar could erase years of humiliation. And every time Ellen called to twist the knife, he just mumbled, "Yeah, Mom." "Okay, Mom." 3 weeks later, I was at my desk, scrolling through internship applications for my department, when something hit me like a jolt of electricity. Allison Bennett, my sister-in-law. In my pile of candidates, my heart skipped, then my lips stretched into a very unfriendly smile. Fate had just handed me a gift. Her resume was a masterpiece of fiction. Project coordinator, instead of glorified gopher. Managed cross-functional teams. That was about ordering pizza for office parties, worked closely with executive clients. Translation. Once carried a tray of coffee into a conference room, lies on top of lies. That night I slid the papers across the coffee table to Mark. He went pale. "This is your department," he said. "Yes," I replied. "My department. My team. And guess who she'll be reporting to?" "Emma." "That's awkward," he said carefully. "Awkward for whom?" My voice went flat. "For Allison, who lied to your mom about being some big-shot coordinator. Or for your mother, who's been telling half of Austin that her daughter is about to become my boss." "How do you even know that?" he asked. "Because your sister can't keep her mouth shut," I said, And your mom called me 2 days ago to suggest I learn from a successful woman when my new boss shows up. I stood up and looked him straight in the eye. That's it, Mark. You're done tap dancing between us. You're either with me or with them. Decide. Silence. Long, heavy. I could almost see the war in his head. Fear of his mother versus something that looked suspiciously like love for me. With you, he finally exhaled. I should have chosen you a long time ago. That night, he became my accomplice. First stop, HR. I need to document a potential conflict of interest, I told the HR specialist calmly. One of the internship candidates is a relative. I want everything handled by the book so no one can complain later. Her eyebrows climbed. You understand that direct relatives in a reporting line violate company policy? I do, I said. But we're short on interns this quarter, and she applied first. If we reject her because of her family, and she finds out, she can scream discrimination and file a complaint, so please record it formally. I declare the conflict and take responsibility. HR can co-sign every decision made about her. She sighed. All right, but if there are problems, we want to hear about them immediately. That piece of paper, I thought, watching her type, is going to be my trump card. A week later, Ellen couldn't resist and called to brag. My smart girl got into a top firm, she crowed. Tell your dear wife to help her out since she works there. Not that we expect much. She's just office plankton. Mark actually snapped for the first time in his life. Emma does a great job, Mom. Oh, we've found a knight in shining armor, Ellen sniffed. We'll see how bright my star shines. She's a project coordinator, you know. After he hung up, Mark gave me a sideways look. That's it, he said quietly. No more swallowing it. Good, I said, because they started this. They just don't realize who they picked a fight with. Allison's first day was a show. She strutted in wearing a sharp suit, sky-high heels, and the face of someone who'd already ordered her nameplate for the corner office. Everyone, meet our new intern, I said to my team. She'll be handling basic admin tasks. Any questions, you come to me. I run the internship program. I saw the way her smile twitched. Reality was starting to knock. From day one, I kept a file. Every late arrival, a formal note. Every missed deadline. An incident report, every major mistake, a written warning with a required explanation, all fully aligned with company policy and HR guidelines. I wanted a neat paper trail, nothing more, nothing less. It took her 3 days to botch a task that should have taken 2 hours. Sort the client database, I'd told her, by region, revenue, and last contact date. She managed to scramble half the entries, invent dates, and quietly delete a chunk of files. When I opened the result, it looked like a blender had gone off inside our CRM. System issues. I asked mildly, scrolling through the chaos. Yeah, software's glitchy, she sniffed. Whatever. Once I finish this internship, I'll move to a real department. Sure you will, I thought. Just not the one you expect. I logged the incident with the time, date, and detailed description of the errors. In the middle of all this, Ellen stayed busy in the family WhatsApp chat. My princess is already running projects, she typed. Meanwhile, some people remain low-level paper pushers. Aren't you embarrassed that your sister-in-law will be teaching you how things are really done? Mark, sitting next to me on the couch, typed back calmly, Emma's learning a lot from your daughter. It's been very educational. We read those messages together. Every smug sentence, every little dig, was another log on the fire. You're sure you want to go through with this? Mark asked one night, looking at the thick folder in my hands. They fired the first shot, I said, saving yet another memo into the digital file. I'm just following the procedure. Midweek, Ellen called and summoned me for coffee and a heart-to-heart. That's how she put it. The heart-to-heart turned out to be an ambush at a cute cafe near downtown. She was parked at a corner table like a queen on a throne. Sparkly dress, lashes so thick she could barely blink, and that fake smile that always makes my stomach twist. Sit down, dear, she cooed when I walked up. We need to talk woman to woman. About what? I asked. Your future, she said, stirring her cappuccino slowly, stretching every pause. And my son's future, she sighed theatrically. Look, I know you've tried, but it's obvious you can't give Mark the life he deserves. Now, Allison. Her eyes lit up. That's an ambitious woman. A week in and she's already running projects. Management adores her. She leaned closer and dropped her voice. Maybe you should study how she works, see how a successful woman does it. Stop being a dead weight. Mark could have anyone, you know, someone who brings something real to the table. someone with ambition, someone who doesn't settle for a miserable little position. Every word was a slap. I kept smiling. "You're right," I said calmly. "I should really pay closer attention to your daughter's work." She left satisfied, convinced she'd put me in my place. If only she knew. 2 weeks later, Ellen came over to check on how her son was living. She toured our apartment like it was a crime scene, ran a critical finger along our cheap TV stand, our generic curtains, and our basic IKEA bookshelves. You'd think living within your means was a moral failing. "You should visit Allison sometime," she tossed over her shoulder on the way out. "Get inspired. Learn to dream bigger." When the door closed, Mark just wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Not much longer," he whispered. He was right. The hour was coming. I called Allison in for a mid-probation performance review and scheduled it for 9 a.m. in my office. She breezed in with her usual winner's grin, gave me a dismissive good morning, and then saw the document on my desk. Her full name at the top, below it, intern performance evaluation, and at the bottom, supervisor, my full name, department head. Her face went slack. I could see the math finally happening in her head. "Have a seat, Miss Bennett," I said without looking up. She sat. Her hands trembled. You could almost hear the gears turning as she tried to figure out when, exactly, the universe had flipped. This must be some kind of mistake," she stammered, poking a finger at the page. "There's no mistake," I said. "Let's talk about your performance." I opened her file. First, I began, the client database incident. Then the copied report word for word from public sources: chronic lateness, missed deadlines, multiple complaints from colleagues about the atmosphere in the team, but I'm still learning, she said, voice shaking. "It's an internship. Your probation's ending," I replied. "This is the formal evaluation." Her eyes showed pure panic. That same day, Ellen called again, this time furious. She didn't bother with hello. "I know you two work at the same company," she almost spat. "You're sabotaging her on purpose out of pure jealousy." "I'm not." "Shut up," she snapped. "You're a bitter little mediocrity who can't stand someone else's success, especially when that someone is everything you'll never be. I'm warning you, if you ruin my daughter's career because of your pathetic insecurities, you'll regret it." "Don't worry," I answered calmly. "Your daughter is getting exactly the treatment she's earned." "You'd better," she started, but I hung up. I'd heard enough. If she only knew what her princess was really worth. Time for the final test. I assigned Allison the key presentation for the quarter, a market analysis for a major client. 2 weeks, full access to data, and my door open for questions. "Perfect opportunity to show what you can do," I said, face neutral. I already knew how it would end. A month of watching her had been enough. She was lazy, arrogant, and convinced she could bluff her way through anything. Naturally, she didn't disappoint. The day before the big family dinner, Mark sent out invitations in the family WhatsApp chat. Celebratory dinner at our place, the message read, "In honor of Allison's professional success." Ellen called almost immediately. "You're such a good son," she shrieked into the phone. "Just remember, the menu has to match our star, nothing cheap." "Of course, Mom," Mark said. "It'll be a night she'll never forget." "Wonderful. I'll invite some friends, so they can see what a successful daughter I have." When he hung up, Mark smirked. "Unforgettable," he repeated. 100%. That afternoon at work, Allison pinged me cheap excuses for why the report wasn't quite ready yet. I checked the file she'd sent. A mess. No structure, bad data, random charts pulled from who knows where. Top-tier incompetence. "Fine," I said. "We'll talk about it tomorrow." Then I checked my calendar. I gave her one more assignment at 6:30 p.m. Urgent, for a client. "I need to be ready by morning," I said, handing her a thick folder. "But it's late," she protested. "Then you'd better hurry," I replied. "Don't leave until everything is perfect." With that, I walked out, leaving her alone in the office with a pile of work and a ticking clock. At home, everything was ready, the table set, food laid out, Mark's relatives on their best behavior for once. Ellen's 3 closest friends had shown up specially to witness Allison's triumph. They all sat there like theatergoers, waiting for the curtain to rise. Allison crashed through the door 15 minutes late, flushed, hair slightly ruined, suit wrinkled, panic badly hidden in her eyes. "Sorry I'm late," she gasped. Work piled up. Ellen flew to her like she'd just returned from war. "Oh, sweetheart, don't worry. We've only just started," she said, hugging her dramatically. We took our seats. Ellen, Derek, distant relatives, the three friends, everyone settled around our modest table, pretending not to stare. Allie, darling, one of Ellen's friends, thrilled. Your mom never stops talking about your professional success. We're all so proud of you. Allison gave a tight smile, quickly sizing up the room. Yeah, it's been a very productive month, she said, voice a little too high. Ellen stood, champagne flute in hand. Well, since we're all here, I think it's time to celebrate properly, she announced. Of course, Allison managed, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. To your professional success, Ellen proclaimed, glowing with satisfaction. At last, our family has someone with real ambition. She shot me a look full of contempt. Unlike certain people who are content with a pathetic paycheck, Derek snickered openly. Yeah, good thing the family has some actually successful people. That familiar stab of anger went through me, but this time it came with a cool, quiet satisfaction. Mark got to his feet, glass in hand. You're right, Mom, he said. I think it's time everyone heard the truth about Allison's career achievements. Exactly, Ellen clapped. It's time we recognize the real talent in this family. Allison stiffened. Something in his tone had finally reached her. And who better to talk about her performance, Mark went on, than the person who observes her work every day. He turned to me. Sweetheart, would you do the honors? I stood up slowly. Every eye in the room followed me. Allison went white. Before we talk about Allison's professional future, I began evenly. I think she should properly introduce me to the family. She froze. Her wine glass shook in her hand. What are you talking about? Ellen frowned. I didn't look away from Allison. Allison, I said, tell them who I am at the office. The room went dead quiet. Allison opened and closed her mouth like a fish dragged onto shore. She stuttered. Say it, I said calmly. Use my actual title. The word seemed physically stuck in her throat. Well, Mark prompted, she's my direct supervisor, Allison whispered, head of the department. Ellen stared at her like she'd suddenly started speaking Martian. What? She screeched. What kind of nonsense is that? I walked over to the TV, plugged in my phone, and pulled up a slide on the screen of the official organizational chart. My photo at the top of the department with my title clearly displayed department head below. In the list of interns, Allison's picture, with a neat little note. Intern, probationary period. Ellen grabbed at her chest, color draining from her face. No, that can't be. Oh, it very much can, I said, flipping to the next slide. And this is your daughter's performance review. Let me read the highlights. No, please, Allison whispered. Chronic lateness, I read calmly. Missed deadlines, plagiarism in reports, disrespect toward colleagues. I looked up. Shall I go on? Ellen swayed. One of her friends grabbed her arm to keep her from sliding off the chair. But she said she was a project coordinator, and one guest muttered weakly. Yes, I said. Allison is a pathological liar. Derek turned beet red. This is some kind of prank, he snapped. A setup. I went to the next slide. This is Allison's email to HR. I explained, accusing me of creating a toxic environment. This was her little prank, trying to save herself with false accusations when she realized she was being let go. You're just jealous, Allison suddenly exploded. You can't stand that I'm better than you. I studied her with genuine curiosity. Better? I repeated. You're an intern who's getting fired tomorrow. In what universe does that make you better than the person signing the termination? Ellen made a strangled sound and collapsed back into her chair. No, she whispered. My daughter, my princess. Your princess, I said, voice frost cold. Spent a whole month proving she's the most incompetent employee I've ever supervised. One of Ellen's friends mumbled, God, what a disgrace. Shut up, Derek barked. This is all lies. You two planned this to humiliate us. Planned? I raised an eyebrow and pulled up the last exhibit. Actually, I planned to give Allison a real chance. She's the one who turned it into this. I turned the screen toward the table. Here's the file Allison sent me an hour ago, I said. See the attachment? The urgent client presentation she claimed to be working on all evening. I opened it. The worst presentation I'd seen in 10 years. No logical flow, no structure, incorrect data, random generic slides clearly ripped from strangers' work online. Allison covered her face and burst into tears. That presentation is scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m. I continued. Naturally, I've already notified leadership that the intern failed the task due to poor performance. Ellen finally found her voice. It came out hoarse and broken. You're firing her? she rasped. Read it yourself, I said, pointing to the HR document on the screen. She squinted at the text, lips trembling, and then read aloud like the words were shards of glass. Recommendation. Terminate employment due to unsatisfactory results during the probationary period. A little louder, I asked. Your friends didn't hear. Recommendation to terminate employment, she shouted, spitting the words. I walked over to Allison, who was still sobbing in her chair. This is your last chance to show even an ounce of professionalism, I said. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., you'll receive the signed documents. You'll collect your things and leave my department with dignity. I looked at her steadily without a trace of pity. And my advice. Stop decorating your resume with skills you don't have. The next company will check your references. Ellen staggered to her feet, shock and horror frozen on her face. How could you do this? She whispered. The same way you stood in my kitchen and called me a broke loser, I replied. The only difference is I brought receipts. That night, Mark's phone lit up with a chain of voice messages from Ellen, begging, excuses, attempts to rewrite years of humiliation as misunderstandings. He answered with a single text. Damage is done. Apologize to my wife. No apology ever came. 2 days later, Ellen showed up at our door. Mark opened it and blocked the entrance with his body. You're not coming in, he said quietly, not until you give Emma a real apology. Ellen left in tears. The next few months were just consequences. Allison couldn't land a job at any serious company. That performance review followed her like a curse. Factual, neutral, and unforgiving. Ellen went quiet. No more boasting at family gatherings. No more, my princess is running projects. The group chats got strangely calm. Mark and I pulled back from that entire branch of the family tree. The peace we found in that distance was worth more than any apology could have been. 10 months later, we moved. A 3-bedroom condo in a new building on the north side of Austin, with a view of the river and a kitchen I'd only ever seen in other people's Pinterest boards. All bought with our savings, years of budgeting and saying no to ourselves. Mark slipped his arms around my waist as I stood by the window. Are you happy now? He asked softly. I looked out at the balcony where, in the spring, I was going to grow tomatoes in big pots. I remembered every time someone had called me a failure, every insult I'd swallowed in silence. Yes, I said. I am, I added after a moment, they did teach me something. Some people only understand when they lose everything. Revenge isn't always sweet, but living well after years of being dismissed, that feels a lot like winning.